Now, looking at this list that you see before you, I'm sure you have some questions. So I've decided to take this in a non-conventional direction. Hey, it's me, Sol. Welcome to the video. Today we're doing a tier list of the best hand traps in the game, my opinions on them. Obviously, none of this is stated fact listed by Konami, like, yeah, go buy this card. No, this is just what I think about these cards that I've listed here, and I'm using a relatively loose definition for the term hand trap in this video because it's my video. So in this video, what I'm considering to be a hand trap is literally anything that activates from the hand to respond to what your opponent has done or something that's taken place on the field, right? So if it activates in the battle step from the hand, even if it's not what you would expect, like a sphere Kuribo or something like that, I might still consider it a hand trap for this video. Leave your comments down below as to what you think about this definition. If you disagree, leave that down below as well, and I will tell you why you're wrong. With that being said, let's get started. The first thing on the list, because it starts with A, Alistar the Invoker. Now, this is probably one of the more controversial choices that I've put on here because most people wouldn't consider Alistar a hand trap, right? They think it's a very good card because of its invocation combo with the spell card, basically just infinite monster spam for great effects and all that kind of stuff. But what a lot of people don't factor in is the fact that if Alistar's in the hand, it can boost up a fusion monster by 1,000 attack, right? And that can't be understated. And if I'm not mistaken, it's not just invoke fusion monsters, it just boosts up the power of fusions. Yeah, 1,000 attack and defense to any fusion monster that you control, and as a quick play effect, that is not bad, but something that's just an attack boost, as if I were to rank Alistar's overall value as a card, as a searcher, for your invocation, all that kind of stuff, probably S or A, but for specifically the 1,000 attack point boost, it feels like a B or C effect. Again, because it's in the battle, you can use it during battle. Like, I don't know if it's damage calculation just during the battle step, but regardless of that, it's a good effect, just not one that I'm in love with. I'm gonna leave it at B, and we might move it down later. Up next, we have a Romage Measurement. Now, this is another potentially controversial one, and I don't know why all of those ones start with A. Anyway, this is an Romage monster, obviously. Now, if a plant-type monster you control is destroyed on the field, you can special summon this from your hand and then gain 500 life points. Now, within its own archetype, that is a pretty damn good effect. Why I consider this to be a trap of sorts is if your opponent doesn't know that you have this and they destroy a plant-type monster, boom, you've activated the trap and this gets to come out of the hand and disrupt their plans, which is what I'm personally willing to accept that. Now, why I like this is it has a secondary effect, and I feel like its secondary effect can't be removed from its special summoning effect the way that Alistar's can, right? Because once this card is on the field, if you gain life points, target a number of cards in your opponent's graveyard up to the number of aroma monsters you control, and then banish them. So it's doing graveyard banishes, and when it comes onto the field, you gain life points anyway, and on top of that, Romages will almost always have the continuous spells and traps active to help you gain more and more life points. So generally speaking, when this card hits the field, it's banishing cards, as well as protecting your life points because it's on the field now. So I think that is a really, really good effect, at least in my personal opinion. I would put that at high B to low A potentially. I want to see where other cards fall because like a free body on the board, the value of that is immaculate, and within its own archetype, banishing monsters from your opponent's graveyard, really, really good. And when you think about it, it doesn't say a Romage, it says plant type monster is destroyed. You can summon this card, so it's not even archetype specific technically speaking. The banish effect won't work as well if it's not in its own archetype, but just the fact that it can kind of be generic and banish things from the graveyard, we might need to move that around later, but it's looking like a low A to me. Artifact Lancia, quick play, neither player can banish cards for the rest of this turn. That stops Karma Cut, that stops graveyard effects that require you to banish monsters. That does a lot for you. It can shut down not just specific cards, but entire archetype strategies if that strategy revolves around banishing monsters, the way that a lot of things do nowadays, right? Thunder Dragons, for example, just for an entire turn can't do what they do when going up against this card. It's a generic card. You can throw this into anything. Quick play from the hand. I love it. This, is this our first S tier or A tier? I definitely feel like it's better than this, but that would mean that this needs to go down a rank. I think I like the way that this looks. I think I like Lancia as an A tier because it's stopping all of those effects for a turn, but you might not be in a situation where your opponent is trying to banish monsters, in which case this is kind of a dead card, which it takes a little bit of the shine out of its back pocket, but I still like it. I still like it quite a bit, so I'm gonna leave that there. The reason I had to do that is because of our actual first S tier, which is Battling Boxer Veil. This card doesn't need an explanation as to why it's ridiculous. I mean, what, 1 or 2 weeks after it came out, it had to be put on the ban list as a limit 3 because of just how well it was being abused. It's still being abused with Destiny Draw because for some reason you can search your deck for any card you want at full life points if you've used this card's effect. So not only are you basically negating an attack, as long as that attack doesn't kill you, you regain the life points, and then you get a level 4 body on the field that you can use on the next turn for like XZ summons and all that kind of, like, it is just a really good effect. One of the best in the game, in my opinion. It is I'm not confused. It's not a mistake as to why it's on the ban list, and it should stay there. And it's just a fun card to use. I never used it until I played Fire Kings, and like, I just felt safe. Right? I feel like a hand trap should make you feel safe. Like, you can do whatever you want to my cards on the field, but you can't kill me. Now, playing against that might not be fun, but the very fact that it's so stressful to play against kind of proves why it's good for the person holding it. Okay, so from the card art alone, you may not recognize this card, Blackbird Close. This is a very unique one in the sense that how do I put it? It is a trap card, but it is also a hand trap. Now, when a monster your opponent controls activates an effect, you can send one face-up Blackwing monster you control to the graveyard and negate it. That's kind of like what Tellar Knights have with Satellar Nova Alpha, right? Like, it's just a negate for your opponent's effects, but this is only for monster effects. Now, if you successfully negate the effect and destroy the monster, you can special summon one Blackwing Dragon from your extra deck, but if you control a Blackwing Synchro monster or Blackwing Dragon, you can activate this card from your hand, which means your opponent won't see it coming. You can just, with the Synchro monster on the field, negate their monster effects from the hand. So just a free monster negate, a free Photon Strike Bouncer minus the burn from the hand. Like, that is, I'm gonna be honest, that feels like it's archetype specific. It's limited to its archetype, and that needs to be remembered. I don't know, because I don't see that many Blackwing players use it, but like, reading it on paper, it sounds good. I'm not a Blackwing player, but like, being able to negate your opponent's monster's effects from the hand, ooh, but you have to sacrifice a monster on the field. I feel like that's the drawback, right? So let's say you only have one Synchro monster on the field. Yes, you get to negate an effect from the hand, but you just lost the monster on the field. Ooh, but if you have two, Blackwings are very good at special summoning. So if you have two monsters in hand on the field, right, just a throwaway monster, you can just negate your opponent's effects, and I quite like that. I could be wrong. I'm willing to accept. If Blackwing players, let me know if this card is actually good, as good as I'm envisioning in my head. But on paper, that sounds pretty damn good to me. Up next is the Bujingy Crane, and you can fight me. You can fight me till the day I die. I will never accept that this card is anything less than S. I don't even care if it's limited to just the Bujins. This card has saved my life on so many occasions. So for those of you who don't know, the Bujingy Crane has the ability to double the original attack of a Bujin monster. Yes, the original attack. If your opponent has Wall of Deju or use the Lunalight Fox effect to reduce your attack to 0, you go right back up to your original attack. And on top of that, it resets it. After the effect is gone, you get to keep your original attack again. So whatever was on you, it's not on you anymore. On top of that, it activates at damage calculation. You just get to discard this. So whatever your opponent might have been able to do to stop you from doing this, usually anyway, they don't get to do it. Now, the strongest Bujin monster that we have in the game is Susanoo at 2,400 attacks. So that's 4,800, right? Now, the only thing is, it can only activate this effect if you're attacking into a monster, but to circumvent that, Susanoo can attack every monster your opponent controls, and this is not a once per turn. So if you have 3 Bujingy Cranes, that's 4,803 places if you need it to be, right? Like, that is just insane. I know that this is Alistar boosts your attack, but it only boosts you by 1,000. This doubles it, and it clears status effect, it clears debuffs, bro. Nah, you get out. Chaos Hunter. Now, this is an underrated gem in my opinion. It's a free-to-play card, right? If your opponent special summons a monster, which all decks basically nowadays do, you can special summon this card from your hand, so you get a free monster on the field, decent stats in the 2,000 range. Your opponent cannot banish cards. That doesn't say they can't banish cards this turn. It means your opponent cannot banish cards for as long as this card is on the field. So this is basically Lancia on steroids, because it doesn't affect you. it only affects your opponent. The only thing, there might be some negatives to this because this has to be taking up a monster zone, and if it gets dealt with by your opponent's card, then that effect stops taking place. So I'm not going to move it up to S, because whereas Lancia, if Lancia goes off, it's done. For the rest of the turn, you're protected. Well, if this hits the field, sure, you're fine while it's on the field, but if you get Karma Cut, then the effect wears off. Actually, wait, no, you can't get Karma Cut. Okay, if you get Raigeki broken or removed in some other way, or if you get Chaliced and your effect gets negated, like this can be hit by a Chalice, whereas Lancia can't. So it has some disadvantages that card doesn't have, but at the same time, it is a permanent just floodgate on all banishes that your opponent wants to do. So I think it is inherently better than Lancia, in my opinion. Both are relative. It's insane to me that these are relatively free to play options. And I mean, Battle and Boxer is a rare card. That's relatively free to play as well. Most of the good hand traps that I've seen so far, they won't set you back too much. I say that, and then the next thing I have to rank is DD Crow. DD Crow, during either player's turn, you can basically just banish a card from your opponent's graveyard as a quick play. So it's like Lance, but preemptive, because your opponent might be, you know, maybe they want to banish a card to activate its effect. Well, before they even get a chance to activate it, boom, you just crow it out of the graveyard, right? Let's say they need a resource in the graveyard to summon a Levianeer. Boom, they don't get to do that anymore. And I mean, Lancia also would have prevented it, but then on the next turn they could still do it if those cards were still in the graveyard, but Crow has removed it from the equation. So, you know, it's different strokes for different folks. Either would work in various situations. Do I feel like Crow is an S tier or an A tier? Right, DD Crow is very, very good. I will not understate that. However, I feel like it's very comparable to Lancia in a lot of ways. I mean, a really nice benefit to it is that it can target any card. It doesn't have to be a monster card, but then, I mean, that doesn't really set it that far apart from what Lancia and Chaos Hunter are doing, because most cards in the graveyard want to be banished to activate their effects. However, actually no, that's not true. That's not necessarily true. There are some cards that will just activate their effect in the graveyard without banishing themselves. For instance, the White Stone, right? For Blue Eyes, its first effect can be activated while it's still in the graveyard. DD Crow could remove this from the graveyard before the end phase even gets there, so they don't get to special summon. So it does have uses that would outshine what Lance and Chaos Hunter do. I don't know if that's enough to put it at S tier though. Do I feel comfortable putting that in S tier? For now I do, just because it's more versatile. It gives you more flexibility and more control over how you use it, which means that it also comes with a bit higher skill. It's not just an overall no banish. It's okay, I have to snipe a specific card, but that one card I snipe can potentially cripple various strategies. You're going to think that this is ridiculous, but I put Desperado Barrel Dragon on the tier list. Don't fight me on this. Look, if a machine, a dark machine specifically, is destroyed on the field, this card gets to be special summoned from the hand. So much in the same way that a Romage Measurement qualified for, you know, the special summoning, your opponent thinks that they're about to clear your field, and boom, you slap them in the face with this, right? It qualifies in much the same way, for much the same reasons. And in my opinion, its effect is much more devastating, because whereas it banishes cards from your opponent's graveyard, which is really nice, Desperado Barrel Dragon, once it hits the field, makes your opponent fear to even enter the battle phase, right? It takes away an entire phase of the game from them, because if they enter it while this card is still on the field, this card gets to do the coin toss thing 3 times, blah, 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 and then non-targeted destroy that many monsters that they control. That is extremely powerful, and if it gets destroyed, it has its own search potential. So again, just like Majoram, I feel like its value as a hand trap is tied to its card effect, because its value as a hand trap special summons it onto the field to use its card effect, and that is just really, really good. It's very specific, dark machines and everything, but even with that restriction, what it will do for this card, it made an entire archetype without being an archetype. Desperado Barrel Dragon was a deck type, and it wasn't like it was surrounded by Desperado Barrel Dragon cards. It was just good enough to help to hold the coin toss archetype together, basically. Now, I put Fire King Barong on this list just as a stand-in for all of the Fire King cards. Well, not all of the Fire King cards. Barong and what's the other one? The red one. Wait, they're both red. Do you know the one that I mean? They both special summon themselves from the hand if a monster on the field is destroyed. Now, I'm going to put that at C, because it does a lot of what, you know, what Desperado Barrel Dragon and what Majoram are doing, by, you know, your opponent thinks that they're about to clear your board, but really you have a trap. No, I still have a monster on the field. This isn't lethal. Like, I've actually been in that situation where I thought I cleared a Fire King board and I had lethal, and it turns out, boom, they had a Barong in hand, so I could not take them out. Now, that is I feel like that's inherently interesting. I feel like that's inherently good. But the problem is it doesn't really do anything on the field once it gets there. The Fire Kings enjoy being destroyed and sent to the graveyard by card effects. So this coming onto the field, cool, you don't die. Maybe you can do something on your next turn. But it's not crazy in my opinion. So C tier. Junk Kuribo is here because of nepotism, out of kindness, out of association with the Kuribo family. Now, if you have this card in your hand and your opponent activates an effect that would deal damage to your life points, so effect damage specifically, discard this card, negate the activation, and destroy that card. Really cool. You exist, and that means something. Not to me, but to someone, I'm sure. So that goes in D tier. And as they say, mediocrity is always one step ahead of greatness. No one says that. Kyroid is an S tier, okay? Kyroid might be, in my opinion, Kyroid and Battle in Boxer Veil have to compete for the top spot. I actually don't know which I prefer, because in a sense, they both negate 2 attacks, right? Because with Battle in Boxer Veil, your opponent attacks into you, you recover that damage, so the attack basically didn't happen. Then you get to special summon this card on the field, and its body can be used to block another attack, which is great. And if you live to the next turn, you can also use it for like XYZ summons. Whereas with Kyroid, the benefit that it has over, Battle in Boxer Veil is the fact that if your life points are too low for Veil to work, like I say your opponent comes on with a monster that has 4,000 attack, or you've already lost some life points, well, you can't use Veil anymore. It's basically a dead card, whereas, Kyroid will still have your back, and it will still negate 2 attacks by discarding to the hand and then banishing itself from the graveyard, which is really, really good. But it can't really help you on the field the way that, like, Veil can, in the sense that you can't use it for, like, an XYZ summon, but at the same time, Veil might clog up your board if you're not looking to do a rank 4 XYZ summon anyway. So like they have pros and cons over each other, and it really depends on what your deck is going for, right? But I think that Kyroid, I'm gonna put Kyroid up there. I'm gonna put it up there, especially because it's a card trader card, completely free. I love you. Next is the OG, the original Kuribo. I'm gonna put some respect on your fit because of where you've been. He started it all. He carried a whole generation on his back, and I love you for that. You furry meatball. Anyway, he just negates 1 attack. It has to be, wait, no, does it even have to be a direct attack? I don't think that it does. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a direct attack, so it even has something over Kyroid. Kyroid can only help you during direct attacks. But when it comes to Kuribo here, he will just throw himself into the graveyard for anything. If you're about to take battle damage, you just yeet this guy to the graveyard and boom, you're fine. You don't take any of the damage, but it can only do it once, which it's not as impressive in my opinion, and generally speaking, there are certain situations in which you would like to have that. You would like to have that kind of effect in your back pocket, but generally speaking, I feel like you might want to go for something else. In the same vein, I'm going to put Temperance right next to Kuribo, except I'm going to put Temperance 1 slot higher, because Temperance has the exact same effect as Kuribo. You negate the damage from 1 attack. However, Temperance has decent stats, 2,400 as a body. If you need to, you could actually normal summon it on top of a monster if you're ever in that kind of situation. If you get Floodgate Trap Hold and you're completely stuck and you have no options, well, this is a free level 6 on the field, which could also be used for an XZ summon, maybe in Thunder Dragons, who knows. So it has additional value outside of its actual effect, but I'm primarily ranking it based on its effect, and I would put it side by side with Kuribo. Going back to working in order, Lava Golem is on this tier list, and I will fight you if you say anything otherwise. Lava, I have never not feel like I've fallen into a trap when I play into Lava Golem, right? I have 2 monsters on the field. My opponent, like, they were waiting for it. They were waiting for me to do it. And boom, my monsters are gone, and I have this flaming meatball. Am I hungry? I've been talking a lot about, anyway. So when it comes to Lava Golem, I would have put you in S tier before. I would have put you in S tier because of the 1,000 burn damage. In 4 turns, your opponent is dead, right? And that was, whenever I got low, those duels were always frustrating, but they were always intense because, okay, I need to think my way out of the situation before this Lava Golem kills me, right? Like, there was just so much pressure when that happened. Now it's only 500 damage, which isn't as intimidating. I mean, I suppose I don't mind it because it wasn't fun, but the real power of this card is its removal potential. It's like a kaiju. Basically, what that means is you can remove any monster you want. You're not destroying it, you're not banishing it, you're not doing it, you're tributing it, right? You're tributing your opponent's monster. That Lunalight Saber Dancer that you can't get rid of, boom, it's gone. I'm pretty sure this could even tribute over a Cocytus, right? anything that you need to get rid of, a problem monster that your opponent has, boom, you get rid of it. But technically you're giving them another problem monster, but you might be able to deal with this one in a different way because you could actually target the lava golem that you just gave them instead of just leaving it on the field. So I actually love it for its removal abilities more so than anything else. The burn damage is just an added benefit. I know it's not a conventional trap because it's not like my opponent activated an effect and I'm activating this in response, but I feel like my opponent has a plan. They've got 2 monsters on the field, and by summoning that additional monster, by extending too far, they've played into my hand and I can summon this. I say my hand, I don't think I've ever actually summoned a lava golem myself. Ask Guy Galaxy about that. He loves this monstrosity. Next is Yosenju Omi. You might not know much about this card if you've never played Yosenjus before, but in my opinion, it is one of the best Yosenju cards. Now, you have to discard a card and then you can summon this card onto the field, and basically, if your opponent attacks into you, it protects you, right? This card hits the field when you're being attacked by discarding a card, and this card has 0 attack and 0 defense, so it might not seem like anything crazy, but here's where things ramp up. If your opponent tries to attack this 0 attack and 0 defense monster, well, it will copy their original attack, right? Their original attack will become the stats for its attack and its defense. So if your opponent has 3,000 attack, you now have 3,000 attack and defense during that battle, right? You cannot destroy this card by battle with the monster that is using its original attack. Now, if you boost your attack up with an effect, it can't copy the effect, which means it will get taken out. But when it gets taken out, you get to add 1 Yosenju card from your deck to your hand. So it's searching your deck, it's protecting you, and it can really stall out certain situations. If your opponent doesn't have like an effect to get rid of it or a way to boost up their attack points, it can be a problem monster. So they basically have their own Kuribo that does have a discard cost, but in return it searches out the deck, which is actually one of its greatest benefits, and it can last for more than 1 attack. It can last, in theory anyway, for more attacks than Battling Boxer or Kyroid or anything really, in theory anyway. Reptilian Lamia, another obscure one. You might not know about this, but I find this card to be extremely fascinating. If you control all reptile monsters, you can target one monster that your opponent controls, turn its attack to 0 from the hand, mind you, from the hand, and then special summon this card out, right? That is, I mean, you're Pallet-Dynamoing the monster. Well, you're not negating their effects, but you're reducing their attack to 0. And you get a free special summon out of it. And if I'm not mistaken, is this a tuner card? Yup, it's a level 2 tuner, and if it's used for a synchro summon, target 2 more face-up monsters on the field, change their attack to 0. So this card is actually, I would say it's pretty good. It's pretty obscure because you have to have reptile monsters on the field to use any of, well, the first effect anyway. But here's the drawback. After you've reduced your opponent's monster's attack to 0, you take their original attack points as life point damage to yourself. So, I mean, it's cool. Much in the way that Lava Golem, you know, I consider it to be a trap because your opponent has played into it. This is kind of like, okay, your opponent had a plan, they have their monster on the field, and from the hand, you're like, hey, nice monster, it has no attack now. And also, I'm synchro summoning and you can't stop me, right? I just very much like the concept. I like when archetypes have unique gimmicks, and I find that to be a very, very fun one in concept. So I'm gonna put you on the list, but I'm gonna put you in C. Skullmeister, underrated gem, underrated legend. I'm going to put you, I think, at the top of A. When a card or effect is activated in your opponent's graveyard, discard this card from the hand as a quick effect and negate it. So it's basically just a slightly lower power DD Crow in my opinion. It beats out these other cards for its graveyard negation potential. And it's a level 4 monster with 1700 attack, which can be normal summoned if you would like to and used for an XYZ summon, just assuming you're in a situation where something like that has happened, or maybe you just want to swing with it, you can do that. Like it's versatile in that sense, and just being able to negate any card effect in the graveyard, like that's really, really good. It's genuinely, in my view, only one step down from DD Crow, because DD Crow has the ability to preemptively snipe the card before it's activated, whereas this can just negate the activation, which, I mean, you're not exactly turning apples into oranges, right? Like it's not like a crazy leap, so I'm comfortable putting that at the top of A tier. I love that effect. Yeah. Next is Sphere Kuribo. You, my friend, go into S tier. That shouldn't surprise anyone. Sphere Kuribo has the ability to, when your opponent's monster attacks into you, change that monster from attack position to defense position, right? So if a monster had some massive attack that you just couldn't deal with, boom, it's in defense position now, deal with it on the next turn. On top of that, you get to keep your monster, whereas with Kuribo, you would lose your monster even though you're not taking the battle damage. And with Battle Boxer Veil and Kyroid, they don't protect the monster on the field, whereas Fear Kuribo does. On top of that, no one ever does this, but it can be used, you know, as a ritual material from the graveyard. I don't know if you want to do that, but you can. I don't believe that it targets, which only serves to make it better, and you can fight me. I don't know why I keep inciting violence against myself. Up next is Sphinx. Up next is Triamid Sphinx, another monster that will special summon itself from the hand if a monster on the field is destroyed, and specifically destroyed. I don't like Sphinx as much as I like Desperado Barrel Dragon, or as much as I like Majoram. They do something, like they hit the field and they do something, whereas Sphinx hits the field and he tells your opponent not to do something. So he'll hit the field with this massive attack of, well, it depends on how many trap cards are in the graveyard. It only has 2,500 attack on its own, but what it's saying is you cannot attack other monsters besides me. It makes it so that your opponent can only attack into this big monster that's having its attack boosted, which is good. I'm not gonna say that that's a bad thing. I don't know. I just don't like that as much as non-targeted destroy your opponent's cards in the battle phase, or banish cards from their graveyard. Like, you can only attack me. Well, okay, fine, I'll attack you then. What if they beat over you? I mean, hopefully they won't be able to, because you can boost this thing up pretty high. I've seen 4,500, 5,500 for this thing's attack points in the past, right? So it's not outlandish to boost this pretty high, but it can still just be beaten over and destroyed, and then nothing has changed, to be completely honest with you. And I don't know, it's good, don't get me wrong, I'm just not in love with it. That's only as a hand trap though. As a boss monster, I think it's an excellent boss monster for what its archetype does, and it provides them very good support. I do love Triamids, but ranking it against other hand traps in the game, or cards that I've given the definition of being hand traps, I don't feel like it's that outstanding. Trifortressops, I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce this card's name, is so amazing. I feel like I want to put you in S tier. Do I put you in S tier or high A? The reason I love this card is because if your opponent special summons 3 monsters in one turn, you can special summon this card from your hand at any point during the turn. It doesn't have to be after the 3rd special summon. Once they've special summoned 3 times, or no, once they've summoned 3 monsters, you can get this on the field. So you can just wait until they go into like the battle step or something like that, and then just summon this card from the hand with some beefy defense, and it's completely unaffected by other cards' effects. Not monsters, not spells and traps. It is unaffected by other cards' effects. Protection like that is just insane, and a free monster on the field, because why I say it's free is most decks are going to summon 3 monsters in a turn, because if you're XZ summoning, you have 1 level 4, 2 level 4s, then you make the XZ's monster. If you're synchro summoning, you have 1 monster, then you have the tuner, and then you have the synchro monster. That's 3 monsters. The only thing that might not do that is fusion, and fusion, I mean, the only relevant fusion decks are like Gaia and DDD, and DDD will spam monsters on the board, and Gaia will obviously have monsters. It is just so good, in my opinion. It feels weird. It feels weird because I know not many people talk about it, but it just feels like such an underrated gem that I have to put it up here. I'm also gonna stop being ridiculous and put Bujingy Crane in high A. Last up, we have Mechamorph Metal. What's your name again? Oh wow, have I actually forgotten what your name is? Mechlord. His name is Mechlord Emperor, or whatever that. Look, this card is not. It's basically what it's on here for the same reason as Desperado. If a machine type monster is destroyed, then you can summon this from your hand. Is it even machine? I don't even know if it's specifically machine. I think if your monster is destroyed by specifically a card effect, you can summon this card. Cool, fine, whatever. Now, why I don't like it is because it only has 2,500 attack, and it says that none of your other cards can attack. Like, if this is your boss monster and you summon 2 of them, you're summon locked, right? You cannot attack with either, and that is such a stupid restriction. Like, yes, you can yoink synchro monsters if you want to, but like, it's just, you're dumb, and I hate you. Okay, so we're done. This is my tier list ranking all the hand traps that I consider to be hand traps in the game. Please leave your comments and feedback down below. I appreciate you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do consider subscribing, because I want to get back to making tier lists and just doing other fun random things here on the channel, Duel Links related for the most part anyway. So stop by for that. I love you. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.